Imagine discovering that the image of Jesus you have always known, white-skinned, blue-eyed, and brown-haired, is a complete misconception. What if I told you that this portrayal is not only artistically inaccurate, but also fundamentally misleading about the true identity of Jesus Christ of Nazareth? In this video, we will explore Jesus' true identity using biblical references, historical contexts, archaeological discoveries, and scholarly research. We'll delve into his ethnicity and physical appearance and uncover how the image of a white Jesus became dominant and accepted worldwide. The image of Jesus as a white-skinned man with European features didn't happen by accident. It was shaped over centuries by cultural, political, and theological forces. Early Christians and artists depicted Jesus in ways that reflected their own environments and ideals. During the Renaissance, artists like Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci created images of Jesus that were both divine and unmistakably European. Michelangelo's famous Last Judgment in the Sistine Chapel, for example, portrays Jesus as a powerful, muscular figure with light skin and wavy brown hair. These iconic images have influenced how Jesus is perceived globally. Imagine uncovering the truth behind the image of Jesus, a pale-skinned, gentle-looking figure surrounded by his disciples that has been ingrained in our minds for centuries. These depictions, which became the default in Europe, were not historically accurate, but rather reflections of the ideals and aesthetics of the time. Renaissance art celebrated human beauty, and in Europe, this meant pale skin and European features. As European empires expanded, they carried their culture, religion, and images of Christ across Africa, the Americas, and Asia. Missionaries spread not only the gospel but also the image of a white Jesus, embedding it into the religious consciousness of millions. This depiction had profound implications, influencing how people saw Christ and themselves. In many colonized societies, the white Jesus reinforced ideas of European superiority and the inferiority of non-European peoples. The notion that God incarnate looked like the colonizers provided divine validation for systems of oppression and hierarchy imposed by European powers. During slavery, the image of a white Jesus was used to suggest that Africans were inferior and their salvation depended on submission to their white masters. Interestingly, the Bible is silent on Jesus' physical appearance. None of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, offer a detailed description of him. So, what can we infer from the little information available? A few passages hint at Jesus' appearance, but they are often ambiguous. The absence of a clear description suggests that his physical attributes were not considered as important as his teachings and actions. This serves as a reminder that true significance lies not in outward appearances, but in inner virtues and deeds. To understand Jesus' physical traits, we must consider his geographic and ethnic context. Born in Bethlehem and raised in Nazareth, Jesus lived in a region now known as Israel and Palestine, a crossroads of Africa, Asia, and Europe. This area has always been home to diverse ethnic groups. In the 1st century, the population had a range of skin tones, with most people having brown or olive-toned skin, similar to today's Middle Eastern inhabitants. Jesus, being Jewish and of Semitic descent, likely had darker skin, typical of the Semitic people, which included Jews and Arabs. Moreover, Jesus lived under the diverse Roman Empire, which included people from North Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Europe. This context suggests that Jesus' appearance was more likely aligned with the darker skin tones prevalent in his region, offering a more accurate and inclusive understanding of his identity. Imagine a melting pot of cultures and ethnicities in Palestine during Jesus' time, connected by trade routes to Africa, Europe, and Asia. One piece of evidence suggesting Jesus might have had darker skin is his family's flight to Egypt, as mentioned in Matthew 2:15. Egypt, located in North Africa, was a natural refuge for them. If Jesus and his family blended in among the Egyptians, it implies they did not look drastically different from the darker-skinned locals. Africa plays a significant role throughout the Bible. Genesis mentions the Garden of Eden near rivers like the Tigris and Euphrates in the Near East, while the Pishon runs through the land of Cush, associated with Africa, specifically Ethiopia. This suggests a deep geographic connection between the biblical narrative and Africa. In the Old Testament, Egypt is repeatedly mentioned as both a place of refuge and oppression. Moses was born and raised as an Egyptian prince before leading the Israelites out of slavery. Similarly, Egypt served as a refuge for Jesus' family when they fled from Herod. Beyond Egypt, other African nations like Cush, Ethiopia, Put, Libya, and Seba are frequently referenced. Jeremiah 13:23's rhetorical question, "Can the Ethiopian change his skin or the leopard its spots?" indicates that people from Ethiopia were recognized for their darker skin. This highlights the presence and significance of darker-skinned peoples within the biblical narrative, suggesting a more diverse historical context for the life and appearance of Jesus. In the New Testament, one intriguing reference to Africans is the story of Simon of Cyrene, who helped Jesus carry the cross. Cyrene was a city in North Africa, in present-day Libya. Simon, likely dark-skinned, was compelled by Roman soldiers to carry Jesus' cross. Another significant reference is the Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8:26-40. Philip, one of Jesus' disciples, encounters this man, an official in the Ethiopian queen's court, and explains the gospel to him. The eunuch becomes one of the first non-Jewish converts to Christianity, symbolizing the early spread of the Christian message to Africa. If you've enjoyed and appreciated the video so far, please give it a like and share it with others to help my channel grow. These biblical references highlight the significant interaction between the ancient Israelites, early Christians, and African populations, suggesting that people of African descent were present and active in the biblical world. This raises questions about Jesus' ethnicity and whether he could have had African roots. Scholarly discussions on Jesus' ethnicity have evolved over time. For many centuries, Jesus was primarily portrayed through a European lens, especially in Western Christian traditions. However, advancements in archaeology, anthropology, and biblical scholarship have led to new perspectives on Jesus' physical appearance. Dr. Reza Aslan, a prominent scholar of religion, argues that historical and cultural contexts are crucial in understanding Jesus' true identity. These evolving perspectives shed light on the diverse and multicultural world Jesus lived in, offering a more accurate and inclusive understanding of his appearance and ethnicity. Dr. Reza Aslan, in his work Zealot, The Life and Times of Jesus of Nazareth, argues that Jesus likely resembled the average person living in first-century Palestine. This means he probably had dark olive-toned skin, black hair, and Middle Eastern features. Aslan and other scholars emphasize that Jesus was a Jewish man from a region inhabited by Semitic peoples, who historically did not have the fair skin depicted in later Western portrayals. In 2001, forensic anthropologists combined data from archaeological findings and descriptions of Semitic people to create a digital reconstruction of a typical Jewish man from first-century Galilee. The result was a man with dark olive skin, a broad face, dark eyes, and short curly hair, quite different from the pale-skinned, blue-eyed figure seen in Western art. While not an exact likeness, this reconstruction provides a more plausible representation based on available evidence, aligning with the idea that Jesus looked more like a modern-day Middle Eastern person. Some scholars suggest Jesus could have had African ancestry or connections to Africa through his familial or cultural background. Ancient Israel was part of an interconnected Afro-Asiatic world, with trade routes, migration, and cultural exchange between Africa and the Near East. The idea that Jesus or his ancestors might have had African roots is not far-fetched given the historical context. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, one of the oldest Christian communities, consistently portrayed Jesus as a black man in its religious art. Ethiopia's early conversion to Christianity in the 4th century and its historical isolation from European influence suggest that these depictions were not shaped by Western ideals of beauty or race. Instead, they reflected the cultural and ethnic context of African Christians who saw Jesus as one of their own. Similarly, early Christian communities in North Africa flourished, with Alexandria in Egypt becoming a significant center of Christian thought. Influential theologians like Augustine of Hippo, born in present-day Algeria, played key roles in shaping Christian doctrine. The representation of Jesus as a black man in early African Christian communities challenges the notion that the white Jesus was always dominant. It suggests that early Christians in Africa and possibly other parts of the world had a more diverse understanding of Jesus' appearance. During slavery, the notion of a black Jesus became a powerful symbol of resistance among enslaved Africans and their descendants, especially in African American religious traditions. Jesus, who endured suffering and death at the hands of an unjust empire, became a symbol of hope and liberation. In the 20th and 21st centuries, the image of a black Jesus gained prominence, particularly in African and African American communities. The civil rights movement in the United States and the rise of liberation theology in Latin America and Africa brought renewed attention to the idea. Theologians like James Cone, considered the father of black liberation theology, argued that Jesus must be understood as siding with the oppressed. For many, the idea of a white Jesus was incompatible with the gospel's message of justice and liberation for the marginalized. Cone's work emphasized that Jesus, as a liberator, should be seen as identifying with black people and their struggles. In this context, the image of a black Jesus became a symbol of empowerment and resistance against oppression. It wasn't just about reclaiming history, it was about reclaiming dignity, identity, and a sense of belonging in a world that had used religion as a tool of control and marginalization. The notion of a black Christ offered a powerful counter-narrative to centuries of racism and exclusion, symbolizing divine solidarity with the oppressed, and offering a message of social and political liberation.